Hello, this is another episode of Startup Kitchen, and this week I'm with Scott Walton, CEO and President of Enovex. So, Scott, tell me about yourself.
Young CEO in the driver's seat of a very quickly evolving organization.
Cool. So, let's talk about Enovex. What's Enovex?
So Enovex is a company that built an idea that transformed into a technology that we're now developing that is basically a advanced gas separation mechanism that we'll be using to basically change the world for clean energy.
Cool. So, how did you first come up with this idea of changing the world?
Well, it started off very young, always had an entrepreneurial attribute, always was involved in entrepreneurial activities, but how this company came into fruition is that I had a couple startup think tanks that I ran in university in parallel with my studies, and in one of those groups we recognized the carbon capture arena as a very exciting spot because a lot of the competitive technologies weren't performing very well. Their costs were so exorbitant that the market couldn't afford to adopt them. And with regulations coming in place very quickly, we recognized a gap between the market's affordability and what technologies could provide.
Excellent. So, how did you decide to pursue this idea? Like, what made you think this is the idea which I'm going to go for?
Well, and this is a key piece of advice that I learned is that before you really jump ship into anything, you need to do a thorough opportunity assessment. So it was kind of nice because, like I said, when we were starting this, I was still actually in school. So I sort of applied some of the academic theory to what we were doing. And we did a very thorough analysis part-time over the course of about 6 or 8 months. So before anyone transitioned over to this full time, we had a very good understanding that we were onto something exciting. The other thing that we did is we had independent, unbiased people look at some of the technology designs that we had in mind, and based on their responses, it was clearly a good idea to transition over to it.
That's excellent. So, when did you, how did the first person react that you talked about this idea with or told the idea to and said, I think I'm going to go for this?
I mean, most people look at it as a young CEO with a world-changing idea as a little bit risky, we'll call it. But a lot of people were also supportive of this. So in St. John, I found in New Brunswick, there was a really good supportive community. It took a while to convince certain family members that this was a good idea to pursue. Because the traditional model for people is to graduate from university, go into a job, secure a pension, secure your vacation pay and a steady salary. But I was never interested in any of those things.
Gotcha. So you actually had quite a lot of press about a year ago with the whole NBIF competition. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a very exciting opportunity for us to be a part of. Gave us some really good, actually, national exposure. It was really exciting to see how the companies were catalyzed by that competition. We actually were approached by 2 global energy firms because they saw the press, the video interviews, and the written press that were outcomes of that process. So it was, I'd say, it was very integral to us moving forward, and gave us a little bit of venture capital money in the company. So that gives other people reassurance that we're heading in the right direction.
Right. You also worked with a professor to kind of catalyst this technology per se.
Yeah. We were very fortunate to approach the tech transfer office in UNB, and I highly encourage anyone that's working on a new technology to first start with them, because what we realize is that, okay, we're young, we've got this great idea, we need someone who's been in the space for a number of years and who has specialized with this technology to help complement the development. So we approached the university's research office, and they connected us with 2 particular scientists that have spent the wealth of their career understanding this technology environment.
Excellent. How did you, so you established this relationship for UNB. Were they graceful when they seen you come to and asked them for a particular help on this idea?
Yeah, I think they took the right approach. They said, well, come back and do this, this, and this, and we want to see these parts of your plan strengthened up. So it was good because they added value even before we engaged, and but after that, I mean, they were very willing to move forward with us, and it's exciting working with the university for many reasons. You get access to very exclusive private academic partnership funding programs that just a private company wouldn't normally get access to. You get access to their students, the top students that you can potentially bring into your company. You also get access to the latest and greatest equipment, tools, and things that you need for your development. So it offsets a lot of your costs of your development and your build, and it also gives the project an extremely high amount of credibility because you're working with an institution that validates what you're doing.
Gotcha. So this wasn't the first idea that you actually pursued. I've actually seen you a few times back in like startup incubators as well. So what's the difference between this idea and say an idea that you've done before, and how did you make that decision in the past to say this isn't going anywhere, or I need to cut my losses and
Sure.
work on the next one?
Sure, and that's that's an interesting point because even today in our business, we need to make those types of decisions. There's certain times where we realize the direction we're heading in isn't necessarily right, and we need to adjust that compass. But in terms of ideas, you've always got to be relentless. My first first business plan I wrote was when I was 16 years old. Obviously, wasn't the right timing, wasn't the right fit. Decided not to pursue that. My very first commercialization idea for an actual product, after we got looking at it, you sort of need to do a checklist and assess all the different factors of its viability, your capacity to lead that idea into reality, and you need to get external buy-in as well. And with previous ideas, I never got that traction in terms of people believing in what we were doing, and those were indicators that I shouldn't necessarily go in that way. And it's just like anything else in terms of investing or gambling. You need to cut your losses before it's too late and before you invest too much time and resources. So that's a skill that we use all the time. And one thing it always comes back to is intuition and your judgment. So those are two key things that we use all the time.
Gotcha. So has being so you mentioned this is the first idea that you got traction on. Here you are now. Has being young and being a young CEO has any disadvantages, or has it had advantages? What has been the challenges with that?
Yeah, I'd say both. So on the disadvantages side, obviously, you don't have the experience of a 25-year CEO or board member. But that's why very early in the development we brought in people behind us. Even before we were done writing the business plan, we had an advisory team of very accomplished business professionals in the province. So we recognized our weaknesses very early on. But in terms of being a young CEO, it always helps to bring those more senior people to the meetings. So when we meet with utilities, partners, or potential customers, we always have senior people in the room as part of our team, because they know if someone who has been around this for 20 or 30 years and they believe in it, then they'll believe in you and your ability to attract people of that caliber to the table. And on the positive side, people view a young, energetic CEO as something that's exciting because they've got a lot more hours in the week to put forth on this. When I came to the table when I came to this table, I don't have a house, I don't have kids, I've got a lot of time on my hands, so people respect that, and that I've got a lot of time to contribute to this.
That's excellent. So you also mentioned that being young, you went for that mentorship. You went for putting strong people around you that helped you. How did you come out, and how did you get it connected with some of these people and your mentors to help you in this area?
Yeah, so the one thing that separates us from other organizations is our capacity to network and business development, and that's the thing that's really put us at a different level. We've attracted some of the leading scientists in the space who are recognized on an international level. One of our guys was on the cover of Science magazine for a piece of his work that he'd done previously, which is the largest stature of publication for scientific work in the world. but it just comes down to being able to work with people to communicate what your needs are. And generally, what I found in this culture is that if someone's not able to help you, they know the person who can, and you just can't be afraid to ask. The worst answer you're ever going to get from someone is no. And what I've found, and based on my experiences, is it never hurts to ask. So networking and understanding how to get meetings with people and those soft skills that give you the confidence to walk in and be able to pitch what you're looking for, it's really helpful for your business.
Excellent. That's very good. So during this time, you've shared some office space with some other startups in the area, such as MedRunner. What was it like having that kind of atmosphere of pure startup energy within one spot?
It's good. Startups, you got your highs and your lows. So being in close proximity with other startups is good because you can help each other work through those challenging times. So I highly encourage if you're starting a company, try and get in with another one in the beginning, and also from a cost sharing perspective, it's very expensive these days to take on a whole office by yourself. So when you can sort of share those resources, printers, tools, computers, office space, furniture, etc., it's a really smart move, and I highly suggest it.
That's really interesting. So speaking about money and like sharing costs and whatnot, how did you get your first round of financing? What was it like to actually go and approach an investor and say, I need this X amount of money, and especially being young in your age and not having as much experience as a veteran as you might say?
Yeah, the thing I want to say about that is every piece of ammunition, I'll call it business ammunition, you can rack up, it helps. Every little piece of selling item that you can pack into your value proposition helps. It was very tough for us in the beginning. We did everything possible for us to rack up money. We launched a consulting service so that we could bring in some early stage money while the product development was taking place. But basically, it's what I think is that every dollar you raise eventually gets easier to raise, just because you have more experience with pitching. You get more accustomed to what the investors are actually looking for and what category they're in and what stage they're likely to invest in. So at first it was pretty scary. I mean, we went out and knocked on every door possible, but we were able to attract some local angel investors early who believed in us and believed where we were going. And we were one of the winners in the New Brunswick Innovation Investment Competition, so that helped too. So it's something where you need to dedicate a lot of time, and my philosophy, because we're going through a fundraising round right now, is that you just need to perpetually pitch until you find that right investor, because a lot of people kind of get beat down that we're not getting money, that must mean our product isn't attractive or we're not the right people to be doing this, when all reality is it's just a numbers game. It's just the right company with the right investor, and that's all it takes. And the other thing too is that you can't get too discouraged these days, especially given the economic status of various countries. So people's money is very tight today. It's very competitive, but I'm a firm believer that there's always the right investor out there as long as you've got a solid product and a solid team.
Excellent. So how much money have you raised so far?
So we've raised $400,000 so far in our seed stage, and we're approaching a much larger number right now that we're raising. It's technically our Series A, and this money will support us through, it'll allow us to finalize our product optimizations, secure a major utility partnership, and begin ramping up some of the technology for production.
Gotcha. You also just came back from, you just almost, I guess you could say, did a world tour.
Yep.
You just actually came back from China where you were working, you actually did some pitches over there. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. We were very fortunate to be invited to pitch in China. We were one of 7 Canadian clean tech companies invited to present at the Northern Clean Tech Showcase. It was right in the middle of this world pitch tour we're doing right now. We've pitched probably 20 or 25 times in 3 different countries in the past 3.5 weeks. When we were in China, we presented in 4 different cities in 5 days. So it was It's just very busy, but that's the pace you got to keep because you've always got to have opportunities to present in the hopper so that you don't get discouraged and that you don't believe, oh, we put all our chips on black and we didn't get black. So our philosophy is you've got to continually keep presenting so that you'll secure your investment. But it was very exciting being over there. Introduction to a completely different culture, but the thing with our product is that there's two exciting opportunities in China. One is the low-cost manufacturing if we're to launch a production in China, and the second is it's the largest customer market for us for our technology in the world. Right now, China is installing close to 100,000 megawatts of power capacity per year. They're building 1 or 2 coal plants per week, so it's a very exciting economy, and based on my perception while I was there, it's still booming very quickly.
Great. Now you mentioned you had to go. You're on this world tour. You've been pitching in over 20, done over 20 pitches in the past 3.5 weeks. Is this an issue because it's hard to find financing in the Maritimes, or is it just that you have to take it to the next step now?
Well, we're actually, it's interesting. It's kind of a hybrid model. We're becoming more selective with who we want to present to, because we're looking for an investor that can come to the table with the financing and the capacity to do future rounds, but also to add value to our development, either open doors for customers or partners or utility strategic supporters of what we're doing. So we've kind of been pulled in different directions that we felt were strong areas to go to. But yeah, that's the way it's been working. But in terms of scarcity money, our view is that things are very, very competitive in the U.S. right now. A lot of money's been lost in the stock markets, so people's conservative cash has been chewed up. When you look at presenting at different forums in the States, there's an increased amount of applications going in and a fewer amount of companies that are selected to present. So it's very competitive right now.
Gotcha. Has there been anything that you would say you've done too slow or too fast, or would you change anything so far?
No, I push the guys pretty hard on the development, and the exciting thing is that I haven't lost the focus on the product development while I've been doing all of this pitching. A lot of people would say that might be a risk to the product development not advancing, when in reality things are still pushing forward very quickly for us. So I'd say it's a good pace. The thing is about raising money. If you want money in 6 months, you got to start raising it today. So I don't really disagree with the approach we've taken to fundraising.
Gotcha. That's excellent, Scott. So has it been hard for you to do a startup in the Maritimes?
Oh, of course. I mean, and I wouldn't say it's just because we're in the Maritimes. It's just, we came out of some tough economic times, and the timing may not have been entirely good. But I mean, I'm a firm believer that no one's really entirely perfectly ready to do a startup. There's been people who have had 3 or 4 successful startups before, started another company, it failed miserably, and they lost all their money from the previous successes. So I think every startup is like a living organism, and it all has different shifting, moving pieces. So I realize that and constantly remind myself of that, and that's what helps me continue to grow and learn and go through this process.
Gotcha. So why did you mentioned you studied at UNB. Why did you decide to finish your education before moving into this startup?
By the time I realized that this is what I wanted to do, I was in the later stages of my academic education, and I accepted firsthand what my probabilities of succeeding were going into this, and I mean, they weren't exactly 100%, so I recognized that there could be a possibility that this might not work out, and the last thing that I want to have to do is go back and have to finish an education a couple of years down the road. So I set myself a personal goal to do the opportunity assessment while I was finishing my last year, and then the timing worked out nicely.
Excellent. So do you have any advice for people who are looking to start a business in the Maritimes, or just in general?
Sure. My first piece of advice is just get out there and talk to people. the sooner you can wrap people who have done this before behind you and around your project or your technology or service idea, the faster they'll be able to identify certain things that'll make that a reality that you need to incorporate. Continually learn, understand what your weaknesses are, and find people who you can bring to the table that can fulfill those weaknesses with their strengths, and also keep up your resilience and relentlessness, because you're definitely going to need it. And the other thing, the second piece of advice is don't be discouraged by no. Don't be discouraged when people aren't able to help you or not willing to help you, because you're going to run into a lot of those types of people until you start to gain traction, and then people will start to help you out.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, Scott, and we look forward to following you throughout the year.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.